Well, hello everyone out there in the football world. We are the Head Couch Analysts, and I am your host Sanders, joined by my co-host Pardue. Man, I already know how he's feeling. He's been super excited since Sunday. He has been repeatedly posting stuff about the DeAndre Hopkins catch, and quite honestly, it's probably a play that's going to be replayed all year, and in the top 20 plays of 2020, I'm sure it's going to come up in the top 5. So, other than Cardinals football is making you happy, is there anything else going on for you?
I mean, I'm getting married 2 weeks from Sunday, so, there's that.
Hell yeah, brother.
There's that, and then, in terms of football, I'm on cloud 9 right now. This is the best season the Cardinals have had in 5 years, and I'm enjoying it thoroughly, and, I'll be happy at least until tomorrow if there's a big letdown, but you know what? We're living it up right now.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. So, today we got a lot of stuff for you. A lot of stuff. So, I think we're just going to get right into it. Normally, I think last time I was the one that started, and normally I have Pardue start. And I'm going to have Pardue start mostly because I think my point will be more relevant after we've talked about some of the points he has. So, give it a go. What do you got for us?
Well, the first thing, because there's a lot of things I wanted to talk about from this week, but a big portion of it I'm incorporating it into later segments. I kind of want to limit my Cardinal talk as much as I possibly can, and not to be a band or be a homer here.
Yeah,
but I think it's pretty fair to say that the Arizona Cardinals are the talk of the sports world right now, and especially the NFL after what has gone down just over the last few weeks. Beating that I think it's fair to say that the Cardinals have been involved in 2 of what are the best games of the season so far. That being the game against the Bills and the first game against the Seahawks. 2 incredible games. 2 games that the Cardinals really didn't have any business winning. The Cardinals trailed the Bills 23-9 in this game and came back to win. The Cardinals have 3 very quality wins, one against the 49ers week 1 when they were at their best strength, one against the Seahawks when they were 5-0, and then now this one against the Bills. Those are 3 really quality wins, and they came from behind in every single game. So for me personally, I feel like the Cardinals can hang with anyone, and they're never out of a game, and they showed that by winning on a Hail Mary this last Sunday. When I'm looking at this game and how it went down, the Cardinals played pretty poorly throughout the game. That defense stepped up in the second half and forced either a turnover or a punt for 5 straight drives in the second half. And I know so many, and even me, it always seems the first half of the football game, it's fire Vance Joseph. And I'll openly admit to being on that train. And then the second half, he comes out with an incredible game plan and forces a bunch of turnovers and punts and keeps them in the game and allows the Cardinals to win. So the Cardinals give up a lot of points. They give up a lot of yards. But, they make the plays that they need to make when they got to. And I think that's a quality of a really special team. And going forward, I think the Cardinals are going to be a really dangerous team. And if they can get hot, especially if they win this game on Thursday night, it's pretty smooth sailing the rest of the way. And I don't think they'll win it. I don't think they'll get the first seed, but they're going to be right there, and it's theirs for the taking.
So, if this is leading me to make a comment on the Cardinals, I would tell you all to just go back and listen to any episode that I've talked about the Cardinals, because I've been on this train for a long time. And even I will tell you right now that I didn't foresee them beating the Bills this last weekend. I picked against them. But I picked against them, I think, in a 32-35 score, which is pretty damn close to what it was. And I also said it was going to be the best non-conference game of the year. I would argue it is/was the best non-conference game of the year, right? It pitted 2 very good teams where, no matter who lost this game, it was going to result in an L and not much else, right? Losing to an NFC team isn't really going to matter to the Bills, and losing to an AFC team is really not going to matter to the Cardinals.
Now Now, here's where I slightly disagree with that, because when it comes down to tiebreakers, let's say the Seahawks and the Cardinals, let's say the Seahawks win tomorrow and the season split is 1-1. And then let's say the Cardinals and the Seahawks finish with a 10-6 or an 11-5 record and are tied for first place in the NFC. Then it goes down to the record of like opponents. And the Seahawks and the Rams, for that matter, both lost to the Bills, and the Cardinals beat the Bills. So that's something you got to consider too. So not necessarily will it hurt you as bad, but it's still something you got to keep in the back of your mind when it comes to playoffs.
But those two already lost, right? So it doesn't hurt you to lose because they lost too.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, right? This wasn't going to matter. On the other hand, winning against a quality opponent, I think if the Bills won this game, it would have been like, all right, the Bills beat a tough team. I don't think they would have said, oh, they would have beat, a team that people are calling the Cardinals now. Whereas if the Cardinals win, the Bills have already been established as like a top AFC team, right? Probably in the third best area, probably, I'd say. Like, you got the Steelers and the Chiefs, and I think it's fair to put the Bills over the Ravens and the Titans, right? And I'm talking about going into the week before the results of the week, right? I think it's pretty fair to say that. So, the win means a little more to the Cardinals, and I didn't pick them to win, but like, am I surprised they won? No. It was kind of surprising how they won. It's kind of weird. I think the biggest storyline for me coming from this game isn't just the teams. I think it's the offseason that these teams had. The Bills made a massive blockbuster trade, and it looked really worth it in the last 40 seconds of the game because Stephon Diggs did what he was supposed to do, right? Like, that is why you traded for Stephon Diggs, was for moments like that, right? That trade did its job. It got the go-ahead touchdown, and it quote-unquote won the game. As for the Cardinals side, that Hopkins hatch is why you traded for him. The trade did its job. It won the game for the Cardinals. And in the end, the team who actually won the game ended up being the last team who scored. It's kind of funny how before this we talked about how we weren't sure how, if the Stephon Diggs trade made sense. And it's made sense all season, but especially after this game. I understand the Bills lost, but it makes a ton of sense. This was like a playoff atmosphere game, and that was a playoff-winning touchdown by Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. That was what was needed for this team. So the biggest takeaway I had from this game wasn't, we got two good teams, or, hey, the Cardinals are good. I already knew the Cardinals were good. I've been saying this a long time. Welcome to the bandwagon, everyone else. Thank you. It took you 10 weeks to get here. I've been here. I've been the conductor of this train. Welcome aboard. But the thing is I don't think anyone ever questioned the DeAndre Hopkins trade, but I don't think anyone can question the Stephon Diggs trade. It worked. It's doing what it's supposed to do. You gave up a first-round pick, but who cares, right? If he's making those kind of, game-winning plays in big moments, you got your first-round pick out of it, I would say. So my biggest takeaway from the game and overall is, both the Cardinals and the Bills won their off-seasons. Not won the off-season, but, won their off-seasons. They did what they were supposed to do. Isaiah Simmons looked pretty good. He looks pretty good when he's on the field, right? So their draft pick is starting to work out. The Bills, their offensive improvements are showing. I like both of these teams, and I can't wait to watch them in the playoffs. As for, because I know you were talking about the Cardinals in general, I will tell you, I agree with you, they can hang around with anyone. I don't know if the number one seed is for the taking yet. This team reminds me of a team who's going to get to the playoffs and lose in a very heartbreaking fashion. No offense. Not that I want that to happen or to happen to you.
And not that I would be okay with that, but compared to the seasons I've been having the last couple years, 5-10-1 and 3-13 and 7-8-1 and 8-8, and it would far and away beat what I've been dealing with. First of all,
100%. And
then on top of that, even if we lose in a heartbreaking way, I'd take that over getting blown out. Either way, yeah. I think if this Cardinals team continues to get hot, they could potentially do something special. Now, I'm not on that train yet. If the Cardinals win tomorrow night, which is something I want to transition into here a little bit right now, I think this team could do something really, really special going forward for the rest of the season. Going into tomorrow night, since I don't want to spend all this time talking about the Cardinals when we get to our picks, I'm going to kind of do my Cardinals portion here. So this game, I know it's Thursday night, so we're probably not going to be getting the best out of these two teams, but it's probably going to end up being the game of the week. It's the Cardinals and Seahawks. It's usually how it ends up.
That's bold to say when we got two other great primetime games as well.
Right, and exactly. So when I'm looking at this matchup, the very first thing your eyes go to are the offenses. The Seahawks still, while they've taken a few steps back and have lost 3 or 4 games, and Russell Wilson's completely dropped out of the MVP race, and he's looked awful the last couple weeks. They're still the number 1 scoring offense in the league. And now across from them is the Arizona Cardinals, who have the number 1 offense in terms of yardage. I said it to you earlier this week, and I'm stealing a phrase from Ron Wolfley here, and I love it. It's confidence is the currency of competition. And right now, where would you tell me all the confidence lies?
Like in either team?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking like nationwide, I would say the media is going to have a little more faith in the Cardinals.
I'm saying in the locker room. Amongst the players in the locker room, which team do you think is more confident right
now? I'm trying to think about like when I was in sports and when I played sports, right? When our best player came out, I'm going to think about wrestling because I was on like the state championship team for wrestling at Mountain View. When our best wrestlers wrestled, it was always a shocker when they lost, right? Like we all supported each other, like even like the ones who like didn't do well, we supported each other. That's what a team does. And when the best person lost, it was a shocker, and when they did well, it wasn't a surprise. And then when they beat a tough opponent, it was like, hey, that's what that's what they should be doing. But it was always when a person who was like 50-50 or maybe 60-40 came out and crushed their opponent. It was like, dang, that's the difference in our match this week. That's how we win this week, right? Was that person. I got to wrestle a couple of those matches. It's really fun being the person who steps up and the team rallies around you. We're always going to rally around the best wrestler, but it's fun when you know you're not the best wrestler on the team and the team rallies around you because you did something that impacted the whole team. So and seeing that's how it happened with Hopkins, they're really rallying around each other, and I'm sure going into this game, they're going to be dead focused, dead serious, saying we got to do it again. Mm-hmm. The Seahawks, on the other hand, I think might be. I don't think this is so much about do the Cardinals have a ton of confidence as do the Seahawks still have confidence in themselves, because they've lost some games that they shouldn't be losing, ? Their play says they should be losing them, but like on paper it says otherwise, right? I would say that it's not so. To answer your question, it's not so much which team has more confidence. It's which one has a lack of confidence, and I would say the Seahawks have a lack of confidence.
And I would agree with you there, because when the Seahawks were 5-0, the whole reason they were 5-0 was because Russell Wilson was playing at an unbelievable level. Now that's disappeared, and kind of you and I disagreed at the beginning of the season, and I said what the Seahawks are doing is not sustainable. I said this defense is hurting them, and down the stretch, Russell Wilson. I didn't necessarily say this and put it this way, but I to myself, I knew what Russell Wilson was doing wasn't going to be quite sustainable. I didn't think he'd be taking this many steps back, for sure. I don't think anybody saw this coming. But I don't think he was going to be throwing 5 touchdown passes and 500 yards every single game like he practically was. Now,
fair.
Russell Wilson's taken massive steps back. He's playing like a rookie, Sanders. And I know like that might sound blasphemous, and don't get me wrong, Russell Wilson's still one of the very best quarterbacks in the National Football League. But he's playing like a rookie. He's playing worse than he did his rookie year. Let's look at it this way. Russell Wilson has thrown his career high in interceptions is 11. He's thrown 10 so far this year, and it's only 9 games in. He's going to break it.
Yeah,
he might break it tomorrow night.
It's possible he's having Carson Wentz syndrome. You see that your team is bad, and you're trying to do more than you can.
That's exactly what I think is happening. I think he is pressing because he knows he doesn't have a running game that's going to help him, and his defense is going to allow 35 to 40 points every game.
He knows he has to score 35 to win.
Right, exactly. So he's pressing. So I'm not necessarily blaming it on Russell Wilson because, I mean, the dude's got to do what he's got to do, and that's what his team is making him do. And it's unfair, but I mean, that's how it is. So when I'm looking at this team as a whole, I think when I'm looking at this matchup, all the pressure in the world is on the Seahawks. Not to say that there isn't pressure as well on the Cardinals, because this is a very, very big game for the Cardinals. This is one of the biggest games they've had in 5 years. I'm as you guys might not know, our listeners, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and it's funny. I'm kind of calling this game the Duel of Fates. And if you're a Star Wars fan, or if you're not a Star Wars fan, that was a lightsaber battle in Episode 1. And that's what it's known as, and that's the music that went along to that. But it's the Duel of Fates because, honestly, I'm going to get a little bit more into it later, so I don't want to exactly spoil my take here. But this game's going to have massive implications on what's going to happen with these two teams for the rest of the season. And whoever loses this game, it's gonna hurt the Seahawks a lot more. But it's going to hurt both of these teams massively if they drop this game. Now, when I'm looking at the matchups and injuries, it does look like the Seahawks are going to get Carlos Hyde back, so that should help improve their run game. Also, looking at the weather, it's going to be a cold and what should be rainy night. So when I'm looking at this game,
we get another monsoon night.
Hopefully not that bad. But when I'm looking at this game, it's going to be who can run the ball better and who's going to play better defense. And the Cardinals are the number 1 ranked rushing offense in the NFL. Bitch ass Sanders, I told you. Anyway, and while the Cardinals defense isn't great, I will take it a million times out of a million times over the Seahawks. So every major factor when you're looking at this game, it looks like it favors the Cardinals, but I'm not confident in picking them. This game is such a coin flip because it's Seattle and Arizona. Weird shit happens every time. We saw it 4 weeks ago. Was it 4 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Weird shit just happens, man. It's going to come down to the running game and the defense, given the rain. The Cardinals are missing both of their starting defensive linemen, and Corey Peters and Jordan Phillips. Tyler Lockett's probably going to be limited. They're saying he is going to go, but on a short week with the sprained MCL, I believe is his injury. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be getting a full snap count like he usually would. And Patrick Peterson in 3 career games has done a pretty good job locking up DK Metcalf. So it's going to be interesting to see what Seattle does in terms of the passing game because they're going to need Russell Wilson to ball out. And if it's raining and with the way – and it's not even necessarily that Russell Wilson's making bad decisions. He's just not even reading defenses. He's not picking up blitzes. And that's going to hurt them down the stretch, and he needs to get it turned around. If I were to make a pick at this moment, there's too much that I would say goes in the Cardinals' favor here for me to not pick them, but I think it's probably going to be close. And Lord knows I would love for the Cardinals to have a statement game on Thursday Night Football after what they just did to the Bills and just blow out the Seahawks. And I would just absolutely love that because they've come in and punked us so many times and, like, shattered our seasons multiple times.
56-0.
Right.
58-0.
58.
Was it 58?
Yeah, it was 58-0.
Okay.
I sat through that entire game. Either way. We also sucked that year, so I'm not counting that. But I'm talking like 2014 when Seattle came to Arizona and Marshawn Lynch did the hold his nuts thing as he flew into the end.
Yeah, Beastquake 2.0.
Right. So it's shit like that. I would love for the Cardinals to be able to go up to their house where we've dominated, I might add, and now there's no fans there, and punk their ass for once. and I would just absolutely love it. But it's the Cardinals and Seahawks, man, and I just don't see it. It's going to be a wild one, but I'm going to give it to the Cardinals by a coin flip.
Wow, he just went straight into our pick segment. All right, so the next game, it's the Steelers and the No, I'm joking. I'll make my pick when we get there later. So outside of this being a Cardinals Seahawks segment, what else do you got from the NFL?
So a lot of what I wanted to talk about this week is being incorporated into the pick segment when I bring up some like storylines from those other teams, but also in the check down, first down, and Hail Mary or passing from the couch segment. So I kind of got nothing else for the most part, and that even includes the Drew Brees injury. So I'll get into that here in a little bit later, because I think that's a big storyline too. Do you have anything else from this week?
I do. So I want to talk about the Rams. So funnily enough, I guess we're talking about the NFC West for our pre-segments before we get to our segment and our picks. Every year we have a Jekyll and Hyde team, which this year is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right? We have a team who looks really good, and then they look really awful, and then they look really good, and then they look really awful. But more consistently, they look good than bad. So like Jekyll and Hyde, right? Dr. Jekyll looks fine, usually, right? And then what? Or is it Dr. Hyde? No, it's Dr. Jekyll.
It's Dr. Jekyll.
Yeah.
He's Dr. Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, he's usually fine, right? And then when Mr. Hyde comes out, it's bad. Mm-hmm. The Buccaneers have been that this year. Their losses, miserable, absolutely miserable. Mm-hmm. God, even the Bears. Like I know the Bears one was 20-19, but damn it, you shouldn't be losing to the Bears.
The Bears were fucking
Buccaneers.
awful.
Yeah, you shouldn't be losing to the Bears when you're the Buccaneers. Like, come on, man. Anyway, so they're the Jekyll and Hyde team, and then there's always a miracle team that makes a miracle run. I will shoot myself in the head if people call that the Cardinals this year, because I don't think they're the miracle run team, because they were supposed to be this team. And if you want to say, well, Sanders, you got lucky with your predictions. No. Fuck you.
No.
Like, literally every...
The national media just talked down about them.
Yeah, literally everything that I wanted to have, like, outside of the run game, I'll admit, I've been wrong about the run game, but everything else that I thought would click with the Cardinals has clicked. And if you weren't watching last year, then you wouldn't have known that. But I watched every single game by them last year. But I watch every single game by them because I'm forced to, because we live in Arizona. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But it'd be nice to, watch another team that's not the Cardinals, as a non-biased person towards the Cardinals, but I digress. The miracle team might be Minnesota this year. We'll find out later as the season goes on. And then there's always the blue-collar team. The team that never wins pretty. They never lose pretty, and they're never talked about, even though they're a pretty successful team. And I think this year's blue-collar team is the Rams. And I'm going to talk about why for a second. So let's look at their record. It's 6-3. The same as the Cardinals. Just so you know, they're undefeated at home. They're 2-3 away. So they haven't been playing well away. Other than that, everything else about this team says that they're a pretty decent team. Let's look at it for a second. They beat the Cowboys when they still had Dak Prescott 20-17. Okay? That was an unimpressive win. Right? It was a hard-fought, unimpressive win on Sunday Night Football. The following week, they blow out the Eagles. The following week, they are blown out 28-3 by the Bills. They make a comeback 32-28, and then the Bills score a touchdown in the last second. They lose, sadly. At least sadly for them. The Giants, they barely beat the Giants 9-17. Ugly win. To be fair to them, the Giants defense can show up some games. They play tough. But it was an ugly game. The Rams-Washington game says 30-10, but if you watched that game like I did, that was not a pretty win despite the score saying 30-10. It was 23-10 for a long time. And then it was, I think, 17 or 14-7 for a while before that. It was not a pretty win by the Rams, though. Not something to be proud of. And then they lost to the 49ers on Sunday Night Football in ugly fashion. Mm-hmm. And then they beat the Bears in a pretty gritty game. And then they lost to the Rams, again in ugly fashion. And most recently, they beat the Seahawks in not so great of a fashion. Every single one of their wins outside of that Eagles game is not pretty. And none of their losses are pretty. I think they're this year's blue-collar team. They're a Sean McVay coached team is it's the tone is set by the defense this year. This is Aaron Donald's team. They play hard, they beat you down, and if you're going to beat them, then you need to be just as physical as they are. I want you to look at the teams that have beat them. The 49ers beat them. The 49ers get pretty physical, thanks to Robert Saleh. The teams that have been physical with them and still lost, the Giants being one of them. The Bears being another one. Because that Bears win wasn't good. You and I both watched that. We were both texting each other. It wasn't a good win. And then the Dolphins straight up just beat them at the point of attack on the D-line. They just destroyed Jared Goff that game.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is that this team isn't pretty. They're never going to win pretty. And they're never going to be the national media talk because they're never going to win pretty. All their wins are going to be ugly. And I think that's fine. Because every year we have some sort of team that, like, wins in a way that's not fun to watch, if that makes sense. There's always a 10-6, 11-5 team where it's like, oh, hey, they're 10-6 and 11-5. Where did that come from? Kind of thing. Or it's like, hey, we've known they were kind of good, but, like, they don't look good. And I think that's the Rams this year. They're the blue-collar team. They earn their wins. They fight you tooth and nail. And they're never going to look flashy. At least not this year, they're not. They don't have the running back to set Jared Goff up with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and all them. If they had a number one running back, maybe it would be different, and maybe they'd have a premier offense.
Well, now that's kind of where I disagree, because they don't, as a Darrell Henderson owner, unfortunately, they don't need a number one running back, just because they just have a three-headed monster that's just really damn good.
But I wouldn't even call it a monster. It's just a committee.
But it's really effective. They're a good rushing football team.
It is, but I compare it this way. When I think of a two-headed or three-headed monster, I think of a backfield that's, like, completely punishing, right? And the Rams isn't punishing. They just play their running backs based upon the matchup and the way the scheme fits for that game plan, which is fine. That's genius by Sean McVay. But, like, Darrell Henderson or Malcolm Brown or Cam Akers isn't going to get you out of your seat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my point. The way the Rams win, no matter how they're going to win it, it's not going to get you out of your seat, and that's why I think they're this year's blue-collar team. And even if they lose this Monday night, I think we should pay more attention to them because they're still going to play the Patriots, probably win that one, play the Jets, and then they play the 49ers who are hurt, right? And I understand those can all be tough games, but theoretically those should be 3-0, and they'd be 9-3 at that point. Their only remaining games that are tough are 2 Cardinals games and 1 Seahawks game. This team very well could be 10-6 or 11-5 by the end of the season. It's very possible. And when they're 10-6 or 11-5, and we all start saying, "Oh, hey, where did they come from?" Well, it's because they haven't been winning classic games. And then when it comes to the playoffs, you don't want to play the blue collar team. You don't want to play the team who wants to get down and dirty with you, because in the playoffs, there's nothing left to play for. So if they get hurt, they don't care, right? If you get hurt in the playoffs, you don't care. You're going to give it your all. They're going to play dirty. They're going to play mean. They got Aaron Donald. Good luck.
Right.
So this is a team that I feel like should get more attention, and I'm giving it more attention right now. And I'm just going to say, if you have the Rams on your schedule, good luck. Just good luck. I mean, you might win. Like, they're not impossible to beat, obviously. But still, good luck. Sounds like a tough game. And maybe a boring one to watch, too.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Rams, like, they scare me, dude. Like, every time the Cardinals seem to play them, they always tend to hurt someone, and it's always a really physical football game. And they're just a physical football team. When you got a guy like Aaron Donald leading the way, that's just a scary team.
And Aaron Donald's not even a dirty player. He's just a monster. No, he's
just a monster. Yeah, exactly. That's the team out of the NFC West that scares me. And it's not Seattle. It's obviously not the Niners. But I can also see inconsistencies in their game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And like, I don't want to get too far into it because this is a part of the next segment for me too. But I can see situations where their season doesn't end that happy. And I'll get more into that in a minute because it's part of my passing from the couch. But I totally agree with everything you're saying. They're not a strong team, but they win the way they got to. They play. They're not a strong team, but they play to their strengths. If that makes sense.
I would say they're a team on any given Sunday could beat anyone. Is it likely they beat the Steelers? No, but they can do it. Is it likely they beat the Chiefs? No, but they can do it. Like I would never say. I mean, I would say in general, I would never say a team winning is impossible. Maybe for the Jets this year it is, but that's an exception, right? Even when the Browns were 0-12, right? Like they won 2 more games in their last 4 games. Like it's not impossible to win a game, and it might be for the Jets this year though. But like I said, that's an exception. But I've always been the person who says I don't believe in no-win scenarios. Like that just doesn't. No-win scenarios don't exist. There's always a way for a team to win, even if it's almost impossible. It's the you're saying there's a chance gift from Dumb and Dumber kind of thing, right? But I think the Rams would have like a 30-40% chance to beat the Chiefs or the Steelers because on a given day where Aaron Donald is in his prime and destroying the offensive line. It's not like Roethlisberger and Mahomes play well when they're under pressure. The few games that Mahomes has lost and the ones that Big Ben loses is because he's pressured the whole time. And if you catch Aaron Donald on a good day, good luck.
And I want to make one quick little comment before we move on.
Sure.
Just looking at the landscape of the NFL this year, I'm kind of having a hard time thinking of or coming up with a year that is more competitive across the league than this year. There is no special team this year. Not even the Steelers. Every team has a major flaw, and any team can beat anyone. You know what? Even at the beginning of seasons, you can kind of pick and choose what teams like you think will be in the Super Bowl and what the Super Bowl matchup will be. You could have a decent idea. This year, I didn't. And it's playing and it's continuing as the season's gone on. I have no idea who's going to be in the Super Bowl.
You know what?
The playoff picture is such a mess, and I love it. It's making this season incredible, and it's going to come down to week 17. And usually, a lot of seasons don't end up like that. You kind of get an idea of how everything's going by now, and as of right now, you just don't know what's going to happen the rest of the way.
You know what I would argue is probably one of the most competitive seasons we've ever watched. Probably since this last season, 2012.
That's a good one.
2012 was when the Broncos were 13-3 and Peyton Manning was there. The Patriots were 12-4. This is back when the Texans were 12-4. Oh yeah, back in those days, but pre Deshaun Watson days, the Matt Schaub days, by the way. The Ravens were 10-6, and then even then the Colts were 11-5, so they were better than the 4th seed, right? And the Bengals were also 10-6. It's just that the Ravens had a tiebreaker because they had more division wins. And then in the NFC, the Falcons were 13-3 that year. The 49ers were 11-4-1. The Packers were 11-5. The Redskins, this was RG3's season, was 10-6. The Seahawks were 11-5 that year, and the Vikings were 10-6.
The Cardinals also started 2-6 that season and finished 8-8 by going 6-2 down the stretch.
They finished 5-11 this season. They finished 5-11 this season.
No, that's right. I was thinking 2011. You're right. Yep.
But anyways, no. And if you remember, I think everyone favored the Broncos and the 49ers, or maybe it was the Falcons. I don't remember, but they favored those teams, and neither of those teams made it. The Ravens beat the Broncos in the divisional round, and I want to say the Falcons lost in the divisional round. I want to say to the Packers. If I remember correctly. Either way, like this game, like that season was pretty nuts. And if I remember, I do remember correctly. The Bears were 10-6 and they missed the playoffs that year. The Giants were also 9-7 and missed the playoffs that year. The NFC East was competitive. The Redskins were 10-6 that year. The Giants were 9-7. The Cowboys were 8-8, and the Eagles were 4-12.
Look at it now.
Yeah, look at it now. Yeah, pretty much.
Right, you ready to move on?
One last thing. Guess the record of the Chiefs in 2012. Just take a guess.
Ooh. I'm going to say 3-13.
They were 2-14. This was the
draft. Oh, it was close.
This was the following draft where they got Eric Fisher with the number 1 pick.
Uh-huh. I remember they were really bad for a long time.
Yup. Anyways, no, I would say that was probably the most competitive season we've seen, but that was like 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I almost want to say 2015, but honestly, both the number 1 seeds in the Super Bowl went to the Super Bowl that year. Like the Broncos went and the Panthers went. So like
Panthers, yeah.
I wouldn't call that like super good. Like I agree. Like the Patriots looked good that year. I mean, when did they not? The Cardinals looked good that year, and so did like the Packers and whatnot. So like if you're talking about like teams going into that playoff, I thought it looked pretty good. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it was the 2 best teams who went to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. There was no upset. It was just number 1 AFC team, number 1 NFC team clash. So yeah, I guess that would answer your question on last time we saw a competitive season 8 years ago. It's been a while. You want to let's get to our passing from the couch segment.
Yep, I'm down.
Do you want to start or you want me to start?
I can start.
All right, let's hear it.
So we'll start with the check down, obviously. This is actually something I wanted to talk about as part of my takeaways from this week. And it's the Bears. Check down. They're buried. They're done. I believe they're still 5-4, but they're done. This team is awful. This is one of the... Every time I watch this offense, it's giving me 2018 Cardinals offense vibes. And it's making me want to throw up in my mouth. That defense is absolutely incredible. I wish it could go to any other team because they deserve a lot more than what they're getting. But that offense is just so god-awful. And you know what? We spent so much time on this podcast in the early weeks of the season going back and forth of, oh, no, the Bears suck dick. They're frauds. And then one of us saying, oh, well, but, I mean, you kind of got to give them some credit. And guess what? The weeks we were saying this team sucks and they're frauds, we were right. This team sucks and they're frauds, and there's no other way around it, man. It's so bad. They're so poorly coached. They changed play callers this week, and look what it did for them. They had 14 yards in the second half. 14 yards in 30 minutes of football. That's so disgustingly terrible. I don't know if you have any comments or anything on the Bears, but I just think it's funny that we spent so much time talking about them and trying to give them credit where it was due just to be right about how terrible they are.
Yeah, well, I mean, early in the season, it's like hard to deny, you know, like when a defense is doing well and you think to yourself, well, an offense can pick up a rhythm eventually, right? It's just gotten worse. Like, it is just like there's been no improvement. And for, I'm not going to have this argument with you right now, and I'm not going to have the argument with anyone else, but I don't care what anyone says. I understand Carson Wentz doesn't look good this year, but the Eagles still made the right decision. Keeping Nick Foles is a mistake because he's not a starter. He's just not. He wasn't a starter when he was with the Chiefs. He wasn't a starter with the Jaguars. He's not a starter with the Bears. What in the world makes you think he was going to be a starter with the Eagles? Well, he had really great games as a backup. Yes, as a backup. He won the Super Bowl MVP. I get it. He did it. Cool. You know who else won a Super Bowl as a backup? Trent Dilfer. Did you see him starting any games after? No. Nick Foles is a good backup. He's a good human being. He's a good guy. He's an okay quarterback. He's not a starter. And there's been no improvement in this offense. I would much prefer actually to watch Mitchell Trubisky, because at least watching Mitchell Trubisky fail is funny. And when I say funny, I don't mean because of the guy himself, but because some of the mistakes he makes blows my mind.
Right. And like watching Trubisky, and the Bears offense with Trubisky, it's still bad, but it's entertainingly bad. And at least they still flash every now and then with Trubisky.
Yeah, because there'll be spots where Trubisky makes, a great throw, and you're like, ooh, look at that. Can he do that again? And it's like, oh no, he can't do that again.
No,
never mind.
He can't.
But at least it's entertaining. Like, there's some wow throws, and then there's some wow, he really threw that mistakes kind of thing. And you don't get that with Nick Foles. He's either on point or not at all. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, dude. I mean, I did make my guarantee 4 episodes ago after when they were 3 episodes ago when they were 5-2 that they weren't going to make the playoffs, and here we are. I feel pretty good about that hot take.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, you ready for your check down?
Yeah, I am. So this isn't so much like a prediction or a statement or anything, but I'm going to tell you right now. The Dolphins, okay, they're may or may not make the playoff. But looking at their schedule, the next 3 games are the Broncos, the Jets, and the Bengals. Okay, they could easily be 9-3, right? Mm-hmm. 3 weeks from now, and then they have the Patriots, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. You could win 1 or 2 more games there. They're likely to make the playoffs. I won't say they will, but here's what I think is crazy. For my check down, okay? The Dolphins are going to finish the season with 9 or more wins. Whether they make the playoffs, I don't know, the AFC stuff. But they're going to finish the season with 9 or more wins and still have a top 5 pick in the NFL draft next year. How crazy is that? You're forgetting, dude.
Oh,
they own
yes.
they own the Texans'
That's
first round
right.
pick next year, and the 2022 pick as well. They own both their 2021 first round and their 2022 first round. Mm-hmm. The Texans are currently 2-7. You want to look at the Texans' schedule? It doesn't look good. They play the Patriots, which I would probably pick the Patriots to win that game. They play the Lions. Maybe they can beat the Lions. They play the Colts. Probably not. They play the Bears. You know, look, I think the Bears are frauds and bad, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears defense just wins that game like 10-5. I mean, the Browns just won 10-7, right? The Bears could win that game. The Colts would win the next game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals won the following game, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans. I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans lose out. Is essentially what I'm saying. Finish 2-14, maybe 3-13. Have a top 5 pick, and it doesn't even go to them. It goes to the Dolphins, who are going to finish 9-7 or better. Isn't that nuts?
That's absolutely insane. And just speaking of the Dolphins real quick, let's give them some props. What a turnaround. Nobody expected this out of the Dolphins this season. Last year, we were just saying this team might go 0-16. This is one of the worst rosters we've ever seen assembled. And now here they are, 6-3, playing competitive and really, really good football. And then we were all scratching our heads when they benched Ryan Fitzpatrick, and now here they are, 2-0 with a rookie quarterback in Tua. And just give props to Brian Flores.
3-0, by the way.
What an incredible coach Brian Flores is. He's completely turned this team around, and they just never stopped playing for him.
Oh no, never. They here was the thing. They had an 0-16 roster and won 4 games. That's how we knew, and why you and I both liked, the coach last year. We're like, this team is competitive even though they got nothing. And I think that says a lot about the coach, right? And we loved that. Right. And going into this year, we're like, the Dolphins are going to be competitive, 7 or 8 wins. Yeah, maybe we should have went up on that one. But I mean,
to be fair, I felt like that was a pretty good lock to say that. I felt like that's a pretty decent prediction. To say they're not vastly exceeding expectations at this point in the season is just not true. They're playing incredible football, and nobody saw this coming. If I were to, I don't have other favorite teams, but if I were to have a second favorite team in the league, it would be the Dolphins, mostly because their uniforms. I just love their uniforms.
Yeah,
but
the orange and
I do really like
cool.
Tua. And I was down on Tua. I didn't think he was going to be successful, but I like his story, and I think he's a good guy. And Brian Flores is just an incredible coach. And they're such a good football team, and they're going to be so well set up for the future, and they're going to have so much young talent. I think in coming years, the AFC, with the way it's shaping up, it's just going to be it's going to be between the Chiefs, Dolphins, Bills, and the Ravens. It'll be those 4 teams for the next decade that are going to be really, really competitive and playing for Super Bowls.
Don't get my hopes up, man. Don't get my hopes up. Anyway, no, but I just wanted to say that, I think it's crazy. It's not a prediction. I just think it's crazy that the Dolphins are likely No, not likely. They're going to have 9 or more wins. I guess you could call that part of prediction, but that's not really bold when their next 3 games are the Jets, Broncos, and Bengals. They're going to have 9 or more wins, likely be in the playoffs, and still have a top 5 pick. It's so dumb.
Right.
It's so dumb. Oh, it's ridiculous. What's your first down, man?
So, and that's where I wanted to get into Drew Brees.
Oof.
So, as everybody should know, Drew Brees has 5+ cracked ribs on both sides of his chest. So he has 5 fractured ribs, and then also has a collapsed lung. And now, he's getting multiple opinions now. So whenever I hear that a player's going to go get multiple opinions, that's never good to me. Because number one, that usually means the first opinion wasn't a very good one.
They didn't like it, yeah.
Right. And so we haven't actually been given a timetable by the Saints yet. But the projection from the guys like Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter are saying, it'll be about 2 to 3 weeks. I don't believe that for a second. And team doctors reportedly said he needs to be really serious with his collapsed lung because, like the rumor is, or like the average adjustment period or healing period for that is like 2 to 3 weeks. But he needs to be careful with it because let's look at it here. How old is Drew Brees? Do you know off the top of your head?
42, if I remember.
42. So let's put this into perspective a little bit. He's 42 years old. He didn't even want to come back to play this season.
You were correct. He's 41. He turns 42 first weekend of playoffs.
So he's 41. He's almost 42. And at a portion in the offseason, he said he didn't necessarily say, but everybody kind of knew. He's like, yeah, Brees is done. Like, he's not going to come back next season. And then the Saints said, please come back. We're going to give this one more run. We're mortgaging the future of this franchise for one more year with you. Come back. And he decided to. And now he has this really terrible injury, cracked multiple ribs, and now has a collapsed lung that doctors are saying, hey, you need to be really careful or this could get worse. And we haven't been given an official timeline, but they're saying 2 to 3 weeks, which I just don't buy. I think we've seen the last of Drew Brees. I really, truly believe that. And here's why. Because maybe in 2 to 3 weeks, he has healed up. But I don't think that's just it. I don't think it's just a matter of just healing up. Because first things first, it's a rib injury. It's multiple broken ribs. That injury is going to linger for a long time. It's going to hurt for a long time. And you're going to be a quarterback and take hits and shots to the ribs. And, it sounds bad, but players are going to attack it. They're going to go after his rib cage. And it's not because they want to hurt him, but and it's not because they don't like him or something, but you're going to attack the weakness. You're trying to win a football game. And with a collapsed lung and everything, you're going to be taking shots to the midsection over and over and over again. It's going to hurt. And it's going to hurt a lot, and it's going to limit the way he plays, and it's going to limit his ability. And he already, let's be honest, isn't what he was. Drew Brees, he's playing all right this year, but it's not like he's lighting the world on fire. He's playing well in a designed offense for him. Honestly, I think Jameis Winston might end up being an upgrade for this offense. And that's another reason. That's reason number 2 why I don't think he's going to come back, because I think Jameis Winston might come in here with his brand new LASIK vision we like to joke about, and he might actually light it up. And, he probably will. This guy threw for 5,000 yards a year ago. Yeah, he threw a lot of picks, but he balls.
Yeah, he also threw for a lot of touchdowns, some to the enemy team. It was great.
Yeah. But, in terms of the ability, I think overall it's an upgrade at the quarterback position. And you think if maybe Jameis Winston goes out and goes 2-3-0 and Drew Brees' time gone and the offense looks really, really good, that they're going to want to go back to Brees?
I think they might. They were 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater last year and still went back to him.
In that situation, it's different because Drew Brees was still playing at an elite level last year, I would say. And they probably would go back to Brees. It would probably be a loyalty thing like the Broncos did with Peyton Manning. But would it be the smart decision? And I think Drew Brees, because I think if Drew Brees is given the opportunity to come back, he's going to take it because he's not going to want his career to end the way it is. But I think it's going to take a lot longer for this injury to heal up than expected. And he's also got to think about his future, man. You're a couple months away from living it up for the rest of your life with your kids. Do you really want to injure that lung even more or mess up your rib cage even more? For me personally, it breaks my heart to say it because I've always loved Drew Brees. He's always been one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I'm not going as far to say the GOAT, but
no,
I'd probably say number 2 or 3.
He's the GOAT stats-wise, but that leaves out context.
He's not going to be now if he's going to miss these games because Tom Brady's going to take all those away.
Tom Brady's only going to take away the touchdown. Tom Brady's not going to take away the yards. Come on, man.
Okay, maybe not yards, but I mean, he's going to take the touchdown record away.
Oh, yeah, I will. I don't think we've seen the last of Drew Brees. If you ask me, and we should wait till an official word, I'm going to give it till week 16. I think he comes back the last two games. So I think he misses, let's see, we're going to week 11, so 1, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think he misses 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll come back 16, 17. Just looking at the injury, right? And how long it takes fractured ribs to heal. And
now again, keep in mind it's going to linger. Like they're not just going to be better.
Oh no! Oh yeah, for sure, right. But the timeline for fractured ribs is about 5 to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be about 5 to 6 weeks at week 17. Maybe they hold off week 17. He only plays week 17, right? And with how close the NFC is, the week 17 game will matter.
That game is probably going to matter.
Yeah. So if they hold out like it is, I would say we've not seen the last of him. I would say we're only going to get 2 to 3 more games out of him though, instead of 8 or 9.
And that's fair. And see, I thought this was kind of like a perfect first down for this week.
Oh yeah.
Given the situation, because I've talked about it on my Twitter, and I've talked about how because I do think this is the last we've seen of Drew Brees. I think that'll be the last game we ever see Drew Brees play. And I posted something about it on Twitter, and I've had people say, yeah, they agree, and I've had also people say, okay, yeah, no, he might come back. I don't think he wants his career to end that way, and I don't either. But you also kind of got to balance. Do I want to risk getting hurt further when I have the rest of my life sitting right in front of me?
I'm laughing right now. I'm looking up some things on for bruised and broken ribs. So it says most broken ribs take about 5 to 6 weeks to heal. While you are on the mend, the first recommended thing: take a break from sports to allow yourself to heal.
Jeez.
Not applicable in this situation.
Right.
That's funny. No, that's real. I'm sorry. I found that kind of funny, actually.
So anyway, like I was saying, I felt like this was a perfect one because I've seen people have opinions on both sides saying, "Oh no, he'll come back," and lots of people who don't think he will either. And again, it's going to be a time thing. We'll have to wait and see and get an official word on the timetable. But it's going to be really unfortunate if it is the last we've seen of him. Because, again, it's not like he was lighting it up this year, but it's still one of the all-time greats. And if it is the last we've seen of Drew Brees, it was really great being a kid, and growing into adulthood and being able to watch one of the all-time greats like we were.
All right, so this one's going to be a little controversial, but I don't think it should be. Coming from the show that loves to call the Giants quarterback Danny Dismal, he is currently the best quarterback in the NFC East, and he's going to be the reason the Giants win the NFC East.
I'm really glad you brought this up because I wanted to talk about the Giants, but I didn't quite know where I wanted to put them in this week. So I'm really glad you brought them up because I didn't have them in anywhere on my show sheet. If you don't mind, is it okay if I kind of just take it over for a second?
Let me finish, and then you can take what you want.
So I just got ideas.
Look, Daniel Jones is not our favorite quarterback on this show, right?
Yeah.
But there's always every game where you and I text each other and we'll be like, oh, is that Danny Dimes? Mm-hmm. Is that the man they called Dude, that was a great throw. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, look he made a great run. And then he proceeds to be bad again. Mm-hmm. However, those flashes of good play are better than everything else that's going on in the NFC East right now. It's better than the quarterbacks got. Unfortunately, it's better than Carson Wentz at the moment. And Alex Smith played a great game yesterday, but unfortunately, his team is not good enough to win a game, even if he has career highs in yardage and completions. Mm-hmm. We saw one of Alex Smith's best games of his career, which, by the way, is amazing considering the injury he had.
Right.
He had the best statistical game of his career. Alex Smith didn't. It didn't matter. Did not matter. The Redskins are just that. Not Redskins. The Washington football team is just that poor in talent. The Giants, on the other hand, play tough, got some talent, and Daniel Jones manages to surprise sometimes. Because of that, I'm going to say they win the NFC East, and it's because of Daniel Jones, as hard as and weird as that is to say.
Mm-hmm. No, I remember when I texted you, I think it was yesterday, I said a lot of things in terms of playoff seeding in this season came clear to me this week, and the NFC East was finally one of those things that became clear to me, and it's right on point with what you're saying. And I hate the Giants. I think they're awful, but they're the best team in that division, and actually they're not awful. They're a pretty competitive football team.
They're
getting
bad
better
competitive team.
Right, they're getting better every single week. They're a competitive football team. And we like to joke about Danny Dismal, but like you said, he shows flashes of legitimate greatness every week. And I don't like Daniel Jones at all. You know how I feel about Daniel Jones. But did you know on Sunday was the very first game in his entire career where he did not turn the football over?
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I was like, hey, maybe he should do that more often.
Yeah, I mean, if he starts playing more mistake-free football, they're a shoo-in for their division, and even then, even if he doesn't, I think they're a shoo-in for the division because when I watch them play, and when I watch all the other teams play in the NFC East, the most competitive and most, I guess you could say, well-rounded team, even though I mean they're not that well-rounded, it's the Giants. Like this team went toe-to-toe with everybody's darling, the Buccaneers. And maybe not everybody's darling, but I think a lot of people
they were half a second away from beating them if Daniel Jones was just slightly quicker on the throw.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I think is funny is everybody likes to joke about how Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson are running backs. Daniel Jones is a fucking running back.
Daniel Jones is a running back.
He's legitimately a better runner than he is a passer.
He's fast.
Dude's got wheels, man. He's fast. That white boy got speed, dude. He's making us other white guys proud. That dude's got some legs.
It's too bad he can't keep up with his own momentum.
Yeah. I mean, in the grand scheme, I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. Obviously, who knows? Maybe they do go to the playoffs and I don't think they'll make a noise in the fact that they'll make like a run and make it to the NFC Championship or anything, but I could see them making it past the first round. You never know. They're a competitive team. If they continue to get better, I mean, hey.
I'll be honest with you. If Daniel Jones improves in the last 6 weeks, I may reflect on how I think about him and give him the benefit of the doubt going into year 3 if he continues to make improvements over these last 6 games, right? Because it's always been a what have you done for me league, right? Mm-hmm. And if what have he's done for us the last 6 weeks is not turn over the ball and shows him, those same flashes, then that can be a winning, formula. Play tough defense with Joe Judge and have a quarterback who may or may not be the best, right? So Alex Smith style, right? Alex Smith never turned over the ball, but Alex Smith had some flashes of brilliance at times. That's all the Giants need. I mean, that's all you need to win, right? Alex Smith has gone to, 3 championship games? 2 NFC, 1 AFC, I believe. Mm-hmm. It could be done. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I want to see it first. I want to see it before I believe it. I want to see it before I believe it.
Yeah, I want to see him continue to improve. And I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. It's not like he's had a lot of help in his career so far. His offensive line's been poor. His defense hasn't been good. Their first-round pick from a couple years ago, DeAndre Baker, their defensive back, who was decent, had all those charges pressed against him, and then they cut him, and now the I believe the attorney or whatever who was overseeing the case got caught extorting money, so all the charges got dropped. So he's free to go. He's free to sign with any NFL team now. So it's stuff like that with the Giants where it's puzzling franchise, like front office mistakes like that, and the lack of talent on offense and missing Saquon Barkley that I think is holding back Daniel Jones' development. So while I'm not a big fan of Daniel Jones, and it's going to take a lot more for me to become a fan of him and say, oh, well, this guy has what it takes to be a good quarterback in this league, because I'm not ready to go there yet. He's shown flashes with poor talent around him. And if I'm willing to give Josh Rosen the benefit of the doubt still, I can give Daniel Jones the benefit of the doubt still. And you know how much shit I talk about Daniel Jones. And that's all I got on it.
All right, cool. Now, Mary?
All right, you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay, so going to the Vikings. So the Vikings are going to make the playoffs, but that isn't where I'm stopping there. Because that a little bit in and of itself is a bit of a Hail Mary. So I just want to speak on the Vikings for a second. In the very first month of the season, all the games they lost, because I believe, what was their record to start? They started 0-4, didn't they? Was it 0-3?
I'm pretty sure it was 1-3 was what they started.
Yeah. So in the first month of the season, when they started 1-3, their 3 losses, their margin of, I guess, loss was only 11 points. They lost 3 games by a total of 11 points against very quality opponents.
That's not true.
Now
They lost to the Colts by 17 alone.
Didn't they?
Yes, they lost by 9
Okay.
plus 17 is 20.
I heard that stat on Arizona Sports today, so maybe they're wrong. So I kind of just stole it off of them and I wrote it down.
So if you want to know, of their first 5 games, if you do 3 of those 5, right, they lost by a margin of actually 11. 3 of the first 5, because they lost by one. They lost by 1 to the Seahawks, 1 to the Titans, and 9 to the Packers. They lost by 17 to the Colts, and they beat the Texans by 8.
Okay, so that's probably what they were referencing. So they were playing overall pretty close games. They were playing very quality opponents. And me and you were on the Vikings trade early on to begin the season.
Oh yeah,
we thought they were going to be pretty good.
We thought they'd go like 10-6.
Exactly, and then they came out flat, and they weren't looking like the team we expected them to be. But now, as the weeks have gone on, they're looking exactly like the team, at least I expected them to be, defensively and offensively. They're getting better each week, and they're beating quality opponents. And now they got a cake schedule the rest of the way. This team could easily finish 10-6, 9-7, and that might be enough to make it. Now, where I get to the real Hail Mary portion of this take is the team that they're going to eliminate in the NFC in the process. And I want to give a shout out to the Bird Gang Down Under podcast. It's a Cardinals podcast from some guys in Australia. They do really great stuff. So any of the Cardinal fans listening, go and check them out as well. But I was talking to them a little bit on Twitter today, because I said the Vikings. I put this hot take on my on my timeline, and I said the Vikings will make the playoffs, and they commented, okay, then who's the team that's going to be kicked out? And I said, oh, wow, you kind of put me on the spot. I actually didn't think that far. And then I really sat down and thought about it, and I looked at it from which division in the NFC
might be thinking about the same teams, actually.
And I was thinking of which division in the NFC is the toughest, and it's obviously the NFC West. And I think, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I do think the Cardinals are a lock for the playoffs. Where they're going to be seated, I don't know yet. But I think they're going to be a lock. So that comes down to the Seahawks and the Rams. And I thought really, really long and hard on this one. And I even changed my mind before we started recording this podcast. But when I looked at it, I said, I think the Rams, between the Seahawks and the Rams are the more inconsistent team. And you don't quite know what you're going to get on a weekly basis from them. And they have the tougher schedule down the stretch than the Seahawks. That being said, the Seahawks look really, really bad. And now you got Russell Wilson, so who knows, maybe he'll flip the switch back to the MVP status again, and they'll be just fine because they got a cake schedule down the stretch. But with how bad they've looked, and how bad Russell Wilson has looked, and how historically terrible this defense is, the Seahawks aren't making the playoffs. And I'm saying that right now. They will not make the playoffs, and the Vikings will. That's my hot take this week.
So there's only one reason that's super hot. Okay, one reason. Because I've thought kind of the same thing you have, but there's one thing keeping me from that hates my guarantee that I made a week ago. I feel like the Vikings are going to finish 9-7, and for the Seahawks to finish 9-7, they have to lose to the Eagles, the Jets, the Giants, or the Washington football team.
And now here. And you're right. They do have to lose to those teams.
One of them. Just one of them.
Just one of them, exactly. And I could make up a scenario
I could see the Giants
head.
or Eagles upsetting them.
I could see the Redskins upsetting them. Excuse me, the Washington football team upsetting them. And it's because of their defensive line. Because that offensive line is so terrible, they have no run game. And if the Washington football team can force Russell Wilson to a lot of turnovers because he's been extremely turnover prone, they'll lose that game.
Yeah,
especially
Alex
if
Smith
Alex Smith is playing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I was about to hit, is if Alex Smith has a performance like he did the last 2 weeks where he's throwing up 300 yards plus, the Seahawks won't win that game. And maybe I'm getting too far ahead of myself and I'm reading too much into the last 4 weeks of the season with the Seahawks. But they look bad.
It is.
Really
So
bad.
what have you done for me, League? That's what it always has been.
Right. And lately, the Seahawks have been playing terrible football on all sides and all portions, in the running game, the passing game, defensively, special teams. They've been playing bad football. They don't scare me.
I'll tell you right now, the Vikings, like in the case where the Seahawks don't make this, I think the scenario where the Vikings make it, right? So they're 4-5 right now, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games left. They would have to either go undefeated, which involves beating the Buccaneers and Saints, which Vikings and Saints, classic. They could do it. Mm. Mike Zimmer knows how to beat that team. Vikings-Buccaneers really would depend upon what Buccaneers team is showing up and what Vikings team is showing up that day, right? The other 1, 2, 3, 4... Wait, am I miscounting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7. So there's room for one loss. Yeah, you could lose to the Buccaneers and beat everyone else. That's the Cowboys, Panthers, Jaguars, Bears, Vikings, Saints. Yeah, that could happen.
That's a tough... And, I mean, that's still a big ask for the Vikings. But
it is.
They're getting better each week. And, I mean...
It could happen.
Yeah.
Their team is designed for winter football.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not winter. Winter. If you guys didn't hear me clearly.
No, I heard what you said. Yeah, I heard what you said.
It's designed for winter football. Dalvin Cook, mean defense? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it.
And that's... Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And, it's... I mean, I was about to say it's no disrespect to the Seahawks, but, yeah, disrespect to the Seahawks. And if our buddy Brian is listening, he's a big Seahawks fan. Sorry.
Sorry.
Making the playoffs this year, bud. Sorry. And now the Seahawks could win tomorrow night, put themselves in sole possession of the NFC West, and be right back in it and control their own destiny. And this take might not matter, but... with everything stacked against them, I don't know, man. It doesn't look good for them.
All right, so my hot take. I need you to look at the Steelers' schedule right now if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look at their schedule as I'm talking.
Here, give me a second. I'll look it up.
Okay, so the Steelers currently are the only undefeated team. They're 9-0. And the only team that's really going to compete with them for the number 1 seed, in my opinion, I understand the Bills are only 2 games behind, right? And even if the Ravens beat them in 2 weeks, the Ravens are still 2 games behind. Like the Ravens aren't going to win this division. The Steelers are more or less have almost got this locked up. So the number 1 seed comes down to the Chiefs and the Steelers. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know if this is like all that hot or not. I feel like it is, looking at the Steelers' schedule. They're gonna run away with the number 1 seed, and the Chiefs aren't going to have it. They're not going to take it. It's going to be the Steelers, not the Bills, not the Chiefs. It's 100% going to be the Steelers. Now you might look at their schedule and say, "Well, Sanders, they've got 7 games left, and 3 of those 7 games involves the Ravens, Bills, and Colts. How can you be so confident?" That's 3 potential losses right there. Mm-hmm. So this is a team that plays down to their competition, and they also play the Bengals, Jaguars, and Washington. This is a total recipe for disaster for me. But I'm going to say confidently, they beat the Cowboys when they should have. They came out and piss-stomped the Bengals, right? They've come out and they've beaten the Titans in a close match. They've beaten the Ravens in a close match. They piss-stomped the Browns. They beat out the Bengals pretty handily. Like, every team that, like, supposedly would be, like, competitive with them, they've beaten. And then they've stomped out some bad opponents. This isn't yesteryear's Steelers that played down to the competition. This Mike Tomlin Steelers is done with the whole playing down your competition. And frankly, I'm giving them the 4 wins against the Bengals, Washington, Jaguars, and Browns. That's not an offense to the Browns. I really like the Browns this year. But I'm giving them that 4-0. That's 13-0 right there. And then they got to play the Ravens, Bills, and Colts. I see 2-1. Mm-hmm. I see a 15-1 team, maybe 14-2. And when I look at the Chiefs, because you have to also look at the Chiefs as well. The Chiefs have a harder schedule than the fact that they play the Raiders this Sunday night, they play the Bucs, and they play the Saints. I think those are tougher opponents than the Ravens, Bills, and Colts. Not that I don't like the Ravens, Bills, or Colts, but I think the Chiefs got a tougher schedule. And they play the Dolphins, too. Chiefs also play the Dolphins. I think they got a tougher stretch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm saying the Steelers have home field advantages here. The AFC runs through Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue against it. They're a 9-0 football team. And they, what, you said they already have a 2-game advantage
in the division? They have a 1-game advantage in the AFC, and
that's right.
And technically a 3-game advantage in their division.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that. I mean, I think the only real competition is the Chiefs, but I mean, I don't know if I necessarily see 15-1 or a 14-2 team. It's not that it's too early. It's just it's really, really hard to keep up that level of competition for that long. I mean, I could see probably I see him going 13-3. I'll give him that. Because this Steelers team's flawed too. Like their offense isn't incredible,
sure. But they always find ways to win.
Right. And you also got to look at the fact that yes, they are 9-0, but they've had a fairly easy schedule. And now I'm not trying to discredit 9-0 because 9-0 is 9-0, man. Like you're a good football team. They're a great football team. To me, they're still the best team in the NFL. I think they're the most well-rounded team, but I do think they have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. And they're far from unbeatable. I think the Colts will beat them.
Really?
I think
you think so?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
You think after the Ravens beat the Colts, you don't think the Steelers, who are just a better version, won't beat them?
I think the Ravens matched up better against the Colts. I think the Colts and the Steelers are a very, very similar football team in the way they're built. I think the Ravens are just too fast for the Colts in certain matchups, and that's what their downfall was. But I think this Colts and Steelers team are so similarly built from the quarterback position to maybe not quite the receivers because the Steelers receivers are just kind of ridiculous. But to the way their defense is built, they're a very similar team, and their strengths are very similar. And I see an extremely physical football game and I kind of just give the Colts the edge. I could see the Colts beating them, and I'll probably pick the Colts to beat them, barring some crazy injury, to be quite honest. And I could see the Bills beating them too, just because I think they're a really physical team as well, and I think they got them with speed, and I think speed's really important when it comes to picking individual matchups and picking games. So I'm not quite sure I can say a 15-1 team, because that's really saying a lot, especially to a team that I still see in some ways is flawed. When I look at a 15-1 team, like, that needs to be a team that's damn near flawless. Like the Panthers in 2015, that team was damn near flawless.
What do you mean? Their weakness was the wide receivers, and everyone knew it.
But did it matter? They were the number one scoring offense.
It sure as hell mattered in the Super Bowl when they couldn't do shit.
I mean, they were facing the number one defense, and that matched up well. That being said, maybe they had their one flaw, and that was not having an elite wide receiver, but they were still the number one scoring offense. So to me, that's damn near flawless. To me, I still think the Steelers have certain flaws. And I could buy them being the number one seed for sure. But I'm not sure. I'm just not sure I'm ready to say like 14-2 or 15-1.
You know, I say this, and they're gonna fucking lose to the Jaguars this weekend.
Probably. I mean, and that's something that you always got to consider too. Is sometimes you're just going to lose games you shouldn't lose. Depending, I don't care who you are.
Yeah, you overlook a team or whatever it may be. So, anyways, we want to get to our picks for the week.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm putting you on a 20-second timer. Pick tomorrow night's game.
Go Cards.
Go Cards? Okay, cool.
It was a coin flip for me, but go Cards, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, I did not go back and forth in this game as much as I thought I would, and I'm picking the Cardinals because the injury report doesn't look good for the Seahawks. The defense isn't good. This Cardinals team already beat them last time, and this Cardinals team has only gotten better since then, and the Seahawks have gotten worse since then. And I'm not going with the whole story of the Cardinals figured them out, or the Cardinals were the demoralizer, because that's not what happened. I think what happened is the Seahawks lost Chris Carson in that game, and they've looked not good with him since. And Chris Carson has been unconfirmed of whether he will play tomorrow night. And even if he does, I doubt any good comes out of it, because if 24 hours before a game you are questionable to play, right, and unlikely to play, and then you're active, you are 100% on a snap count.
Mm-hmm.
So,
especially on Thursday Night Football.
So it won't matter. It won't matter. I think the Cardinals take the lead in the NFC West with this right here, and we start looking at whether the Cardinals are a potential number one seed or not moving forward. I don't think they are, by the way, but we'll be looking at that potential. Moving on to the next one. I'm gonna pick this one first. It's the Bengals and the Washington Football Team. So believe it or not, Pardue, the Washington Football Team is gonna burn me for a third week in a row. Hold on. They're gonna burn me a third week in a row as I pick the Cincinnati Bengals to win this game. Because Washington's gonna win this game now that I picked Cincinnati to win this game. I think Cincinnati's a much better team. The only real shot that this team has is if Alex Smith plays like really good football again. But his counterpart on the other side is Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow plays really good football too. And I think the Bengals are a feistier team than the Washington team. So even though this is in Washington and it's a rookie quarterback and whatnot, I give the edge to the Bengals.
Yeah, this one's a pretty easy one for me. I don't like picking the Washington Football Team at all in any sense of the matter. And I also just really like Joe Burrow, and I think he's probably going to end up lighting that defense up, and like he's done to a lot of defenses this year, so I'm going Bengals.
All right, cool. So having Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback for the Saints probably opens up that offense a bit, I would say. It might open up some more routes for Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. This is a fully healthy Saints team now. If you ask me, they're going to rock. They're going to rock the Falcons. Drew Brees or not, they're going to rock the Falcons.
Yeah, you're probably right there. I'm not quite sure, they'll rock them. I think the Falcons they're a really competitive football team. They're just not very well coached, and they don't know how to finish. I think they're a good team. They really, truly are when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But I do think Jameis Winston is going to elevate this offense. And I think and it's no disrespect to Drew Brees in any way. I think he's going to elevate it, and I think it's going to be better. I think Michael Thomas is going to look better in this offense without Drew Brees leading the way, which is just kind of weird to say. But yeah, I'm gonna go New Orleans, and I think Jameis Winston is gonna. I'm actually really looking forward to see famous Jameis, take over this offense. I think it's gonna be really interesting.
Cool. So I don't think there's much to say about the Steelers and the Jaguars, is there?
Nah.
I'm
picking Jags.
You're what?
I said nah. I'm picking the Jags. I'm picking the Steelers. It's yeah.
They gave a competitive game to the Packers, but I don't know, man. The Jaguars are fool's bait to me. Isn't it so crazy that they went 1-0 and it looks so cool with Minshew Mania for 1 week, and now they're 1-8, which is what we expected them to be, and that one loss could totally screw them over from something like Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm. Or that one win, you mean? But yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, Steelers, I'm with you there. Do you have anything on the Patriots or Texans?
It's going to be a boring game. I mean, David Johnson's on the IR, which it's another W in this trade for the Cardinals. Other than that, no, not really. I'm going Patriots, though.
Man, I feel
I think it's a boring matchup.
I feel real bad for the Texans. And I'm going Patriots here, too, mostly because the Patriots seem to have found their groove on offense again the last couple of weeks. This is a ground and pound team, right? Pound the ball, run it down their throats, and I don't think the Texans are going to be able to stop it, to be honest with you. And if you're only scoring 7 points against the Browns defense, how many points are they going to score against the Patriots defense? 13? 14? I feel really bad for Deshaun Watson. So yeah, Patriots. Next one, Eagles-Browns. Look, I think I've come at a point where I have lost faith in the Eagles. Maybe they still win the division, but I like the Browns, and I think they're a much better team. And even though they only scored 10 points, they probably should have scored 17, but Nick Chubb was smart and went out at the 1-yard line. Mm-hmm. And
you also got to take into account that wind in that game was absolutely insane.
Oh, yeah.
50-mile-per-hour gusts, man. You're not going to do much of anything in a football game like that.
Oh, yeah. With all the storminess and whatnot, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it should have been 17-7, and they gave a beating down to the Texans. They won the game handily. Mm-hmm. The question here is, do you give the Eagles a shot at, figuring out the Browns defense? I really don't. I think Myles Garrett goes off on this horrid line, with 2.5 sacks, maybe 3. That's not a joke. I actually think that might happen.
Yeah.
And the Browns, just defensively manhandle the Eagles, and the Browns take care of business with the running game and Baker throwing a couple good throws.
Yeah, this one's a pretty easy pick for me. Yeah, I'm gonna go Browns.
Yeah, I'll give you the next 3. Lions, Panthers.
Lions and Panthers. I think this is actually a pretty good matchup. I think the Panthers are pretty much done in terms of being a competitive football team this year, because I believe now they dropped to 3-7. And I think Teddy Bridgewater might not be playing this week either, so maybe it's not going to be as competitive as I thought. Either way, I was going to pick the Lions because they are a really competitive team. They played well this season. I think there's going to be some interesting matchups in this game, though, in terms of the offensive and defensive matchups between the two teams. But I am going to go with the Lions.
Cool. So my biggest thing here is Christian McCaffrey is expected to miss this game. And Bridgewater did practice, and he may or may not play this game. The only thing that's scary is he suffered an MCL sprain. I don't know which leg it was on. If it was on his previous leg where he tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL, that's
I think
scary.
It was his left leg.
Okay, it wasn't the actual. Okay, because I was going to say, that'd be scary.
Because I remember watching the play it happen. I think his left leg was the gimpy leg.
But I do know he practiced. So we'll see what happens. There was no structural damage, so he's likely to play. But either way, without McCaffrey, and not that they haven't played well without McCaffrey, but I think without McCaffrey in this case, where your quarterback is hurt and his mobile ability might be taken away, you're asking statue quarterback to play against statue quarterback, and I'll take Matt Stafford in that situation. Right. So yeah, I'm picking Lions. Yep. All right, you got the Titans and the Ravens. What you got?
Titans and Ravens, and no disrespect to you, my guy, but I'm going Titans in this one. I really like this Ravens football team, but they're not giving me a lot to believe in right now. And I have full confidence they're still going to be a playoff team, but I'm not sure how competitive this team really is. I think they're going to beat the bad teams, and they're going to be competitive against the good teams, but I just don't know if they have enough to beat the good teams. Like Lamar Jackson said it, teams are calling out our plays pre-snap. And I kind of joked, it's because they only run RPO slants and read options. Obviously, it's more than that, but that's part of it, man. It's like they do run a lot of similar concepts constantly, and eventually teams are just going to figure it out. So Lamar Jackson needs to figure out a way to get out of his comfort zone, start running things that he isn't necessarily comfortable with, but he's got to change it up, man. Like, you can't just run the same plays over and over again. This isn't college where you just run the same 4 concepts. Lamar Jackson's got to adapt. He's got to get better, and he needs to develop as a quarterback and not a good football player. He needs to be a good quarterback. And he is a good quarterback, but he's far from a great one, and that's what's holding this team back at the moment. And you know how much I love Lamar Jackson, and he's still a great player, don't get me wrong, but he's struggling at the moment because teams have figured him out. And so he needs to find a way to adapt to that. And I think you could agree with me there. That being said, I think Derrick Henry, he's played some good defenses this year, and he's had their way with them, and he's playing a good defense this week too. And I think that's going to be the key to victory. The Titans play decent defense. And if you're, hey, and again, I'm not trying to bag on the Ravens, and I'm not trying to hurt you or anything, but I think if you're going to be able to call out their plays at the line pre-snap, that's a big advantage. And I just got to give it to the Titans here.
So I think the whole calling out our plays thing has been overhyped because if you remember correctly, Clay Matthews called out the Panthers play, and Cam Newton said, "Hey, you've been watching film. All right, watch this," and he still got the touchdown.
Yeah.
Right? So calling out plays is a thing that always happens, and I think because it's Lamar Jackson, people are going to overhype it. I think the whole thing is overplayed. By the way, the Steelers called out the plays and still got gashed for a ton of yardage. So I don't buy that whole thing. I actually don't even blame Lamar for Sunday's loss. He actually played pretty well. If you want to know, by the way, he played just as well as Derek Carr and Patrick Mahomes did against the Patriots. 260-something yards and 2 touchdowns. And a 70% completion percentage. Lamar played just fine. The big issue, and this is the reason I'm picking the Titans to win this week too against Baltimore. The biggest issue was once Brandon Williams was out of the game, they could not stop the run. If you're a Ravens fan, which most people listening to this are not, I may be the only one here, you would know that the Ravens are currently 1-7 when Brandon Williams is not playing on the defensive line when he is out. Mm-hmm. They also, I forget what the stat is. It's an old stat from last year, and I'm sure it's gotten worse since then. But I remember a stat from last year that said the Ravens on average held their opponents to 80 or 90 something rush yards per game with Brandon Williams on the defensive line. And when Brandon Williams was out, they were averaging 130. It's a 40-yard difference, my guy. Brandon Williams is expected to be out this Sunday, which means they will have a gaping hole on that line this Sunday, which means Derrick Henry is going to run this team over. I don't even care if Lamar Jackson plays at an MVP level. It won't matter. I think they're going to ball control this game. Derrick Henry, they're just going to give it to Henry. They're just going to run it down their throats, and this defense is going to give up at least 150, if not more than that, to Derrick Henry this weekend.
Oh, wow. I didn't think he was going to go off for that much, but damn.
No, I'm being dead serious. This isn't me being doomer or doom and gloom. This isn't the apocalypse. This is just reality of how this Ravens defense has worked when Brandon Williams is not in the game. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm picking the Titans, and Derrick Henry's going to have a monster day.
I'm sorry for your pain.
Nah, no worries, dude. We'll be 6-4. As a fan, I'm honest, dude. If we're 6-4, I won't be panicking. If we lose to the Steelers Thanksgiving night, I will be panicking. Because that means we'll be 6-5 in a very tough AFC. We might not make the playoffs at that point, my guy.
Right.
So yeah, I will be panicking if we lose to the Steelers. Not so much if we lose to the Titans at the moment. Jets, Chargers?
I'm sorry, let me look at my show sheet here. You said it was Jets and Chargers?
Yep.
Did I not write this down?
You don't need to, because you're probably going to vote for the
obviously,
Chargers.
yeah, but I'm doing it also to keep track of just like my picks this week. Obviously, I picked the Chargers. There's not a whole lot to say on this. I think the one thing that's going to hold the Chargers back is Justin Herbert's new haircut, because he looks like a dude who's just going to go into the bathroom at junior high and give someone a swirly. So I think with his new look, he's probably going to have the worst start of his career, but I don't think he needs to play that well to beat the Jets. So
that's some superstitious shit right there. The only thing I will say is for one more week, get to watch Flacco start another game. I will always watch Jets games if he's starting. I don't even care, man. It doesn't even matter, dude. I was so happy for him on Monday night when he had a good game. The fact that he was connecting with Perriman actually kind of pissed me off because I was wondering where that was when they were both on Baltimore. But I digress. I'm picking the Chargers anyway. I'm not going to be biased here towards Flacco. The Jets are just a bad team, and they're still coached by Adam Gase. Moving on, the Dolphins and the Broncos. I'll take this one. The Dolphins have Tua at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And the Broncos have Drew Lock or whatever backup's going to play this weekend. the scale really favors Tua, first of all. And Brian Flores is going to outcoach Vic Fangio 100%. The Dolphins got this.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me. Denver is one of the worst teams in the league. Drew Lock might not even play, and I don't even think he's that good anyway. Dolphins.
Yep. Vikings, Cowboys. Do we give a shot to the Cowboys at all? They had the competitive game against the Steelers. Do they make this one competitive against the Vikings?
Sanders, no.
No?
Even if they do make it competitive, which they won't, and Andy Dalton might be coming back. So maybe it's competitive, but I'm not picking them to win it. Go Vikes.
All I asked was competitive. I didn't say your pick. I just said, can they make it competitive?
They're so bad.
Yeah, but
and I don't even think it was necessarily that the Cowboys made that game competitive. I just think the Steelers didn't play well that day.
They just dropped the ball.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm picking
the shit ass Cowboys. I don't care.
I'm picking the Vikings anyway too. They seem to be on a roll. I don't think the Vikings are amazing, but they're certainly playing like a solid team.
Right.
Next one. This one should be fun. This might get game of the week actually. Packers and the Colts.
Yeah. This one's actually. I didn't have a hard time picking this one, and I picked the Colts.
Okay.
And I'm not even that big on the Colts, but the reason I picked them is because, like you've said multiple times this season, I'm sure you've mentioned on this podcast too, but I know you've mentioned it a lot, just in texting back and forth on game days. But the Packers really struggle. They did last year too against teams that are physical. You saw it in the NFC Championship game. You've seen it multiple times this year. And this Colts team's a pretty damn physical team. They run the ball. They got a really good defense that's going to punch you in the mouth. It's just from what I've seen, the Packers struggle against teams like this, and the Colts are a good, decent football team, so I'm going to go Colts.
So funny enough, I think we're both picking the Colts this one.
Wow, I was hoping to get another pick on you.
Well, dude, we haven't disagreed on any of these yet.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if I stay at 4 this week, I stay at 4 this week.
By the way, it's 3. I was stupid, and I thought 89 and 91 was a 3. Either way, you have a 3-game difference. It's a big gap. For the same reasons you just said, right? You took the words out of my mouth. The Packers are not good at winning physical football games, and until they do, I don't think I'm gonna pick them to beat physical teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I think naturally, I'm just always gonna pick the physical team to beat the Packers. I think the Packers could beat the Chiefs. But it's weird to say I think they could beat the Chiefs, but not the Colts.
Right.
But I think that's matchup
and it's
dependent.
not that right, and it's not that I don't think the Packers can win this game because they certainly can.
Well, they
Packers
certainly
are
can.
a good football
100%.
team. But from what I've seen, they do, like you said, like the observation you've made, and I'm stealing, I'll admit, that they struggle against physical football teams, and this Colts team is a physical football team, so I'm going to pick them.
Yeah, same here. I'm picking the Colts as well. Sunday Night Football. This one's going to be hype as all heck. Chiefs and Raiders. I'm going to go first on Monday Night Football, so why don't you take this one first?
So I do think this game is going to be really hype as well. We've said multiple times, and that we're, at least me personally, I don't know how high you are on the Raiders, but I'm pretty high on them. I think
like
they're
them.
really well coached.
I'm not high on them, but I like them.
Right. Derek Carr, to me, is a really, really underrated quarterback. And, like, it's kind of weird that, you know, I'm a Cardinal fan and I have this new special, you know, revolutionizing toy quarterback. But, like, my other favorite quarterbacks in the league are guys like Ryan Tannehill and Derek Carr.
Statues.
Right, exactly. You know, more traditional quarterbacks. But guys that don't seem to get the respect they deserve. And I don't think Derek Carr gets the respect he deserves.
Because they're not Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, or Russell Wilson.
Exactly. I think the Raiders have a really good running game. They got good weapons offensively, and they got a really well-coached defense. All that being said, I find it hard to believe that the Chiefs drop 2 games to the same team. I think Andy Reid's too damn good of a coach. I think Patrick Mahomes is too damn good of a quarterback. I think this Chiefs defense will come with a better game plan. I'm going to go Chiefs this one.
Yeah, I'm going Chiefs here too. Mostly because the Raiders already won, and it's really hard to 2-0 an opponent, which is funny because I easily picked the Cardinals over the Seahawks, but that's a totally different scenario.
And I mean, even you said, like, when they played on Sunday night a few weeks back, you said there's no way I'm picking the Cardinals to win on Thursday night. I remember you saying that, and now, I mean, things change.
Yeah, and it's because of how the team's matchup. But the difference is I think the Cardinals are a better team than the Seahawks. I don't think the Raiders are a better team than the Chiefs. Yeah, the one loss is against Las Vegas, but I had to stutter to say that. The one loss is against Las Vegas.
It's still hard.
It is a little bit hard. Just like with Washington. It's still hard not to say Redskins when we know it's the Washington football team. But the Chiefs are the better team, right? And it's possible to beat the better team. But it's almost impossible to beat the better team twice, right? And we see that a lot in playoffs, like when a team plays like a non-divisional team once, right? Like the Colts and the Patriots, that was a classic matchup with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, right? More often than not, Tom Brady got the better of Peyton. And even when Tom Brady won a game, like let's just say in season, Tom Brady came back and was like, yeah, not again. Or vice versa. Peyton Manning was like, yeah, not again this year. I think the same thing's going to happen here. The Chiefs got some tape. They can see where their errors are. And while the Raiders have tape on how to beat them, the Raiders don't have tape on like how the Chiefs can beat them, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Like, obviously, you know, the Raiders will say, hey, these are their habits. This is what we're going to do against it. But the Chiefs are going to go into the film room and say, hey, this is how they kicked our ass last week. This is how we prevent it. It's not happening again. We play our game offensively like we did last time, and as long as we step up on defense, we're fine. Stop Derek Carr with his rhythm throws. Stop Josh Jacobs in the running game when they turn to the running game. You're good. I think the Chiefs win this one on Sunday night. I think what's going to be a firework game, honestly. Alrighty, so Monday Night Football, actually a good matchup for once. We got the Rams and the Buccaneers. 1-6-3 team, 173 team. This has got a lot of NFC seeding implications. I'm going to start off by saying I really like the Rams and the blue-collar feel they have. Are they boring to watch? Absolutely. There's nothing entertaining about them. I wouldn't say, man, I really want to watch this Rams game. But I can appreciate the efforts they put into it. The Bucs, on the other hand, are kind of like a high-flying or dead-on-the-ground kind of team. And I think it really depends on who shows up, right? Does Aaron Donald take over the game? Does Sean McVay have a genius game plan that outplays Todd Bowles? I really don't know. But considering how this game is in Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay has fans and whatnot, and it's on Monday night, and I think Tom Brady needs to put out an actual primetime game where he actually shines. I don't think the Buccaneers lose this one because last time they were in the spotlight, they were embarrassed. And yeah, they won last week, but they weren't in the spotlight last week. Right? It's just, oh, hey, we beat the Panthers. Cool. Now you're in the spotlight, and you're against a decent team. You better show up. For that reason and the motivations and how they match up as well, outside of Aaron Donald, I'm not really sure where else they're going to get after Tom Brady. They don't have the two-headed monster in the defensive line like the Saints did. And Jalen Ramsey is only going to shut down one wide receiver, not the three others on this team, right? I got to go Buccaneers, I think. It's a tough one, but that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going Buccaneers as well. And like you said, I think the Rams are a good team. They're very much flawed, and they're really inconsistent when I watch them from a week-to-week basis. I just think, and I'm not big on the Buccaneers either, but I do think they are the better team. I give them the edge here, and it's no disrespect to the Rams. I don't know. I just like the matchup better for the Buccaneers. And what I think this game's really going to come down to is those Buccaneers wide receivers versus that Rams secondary. And yeah, they got Jalen Ramsey, and you got a couple other maybe decent pieces there, but are you really going to be able to cover,
everyone?
Mike Evans, AB, Godwin, Gronk, so on and so forth. And then Ronald Jones has really developed into one of the better, maybe not one of the better running backs in the league, but he's a pretty damn good running back, and he fits very well into this what Arizona fans like to call the bash and bomb offense that is Bruce Arians' offense. And he's a good receiver out of the backfield as well. So I just think that, it's not that the Rams' defense isn't good. They have really great pieces, but I'm not sure they're a great cohesive unit as a defense. I've always kind of thought that. So I just think maybe this Buccaneers offense has a little bit too much firepower for this Rams defense to keep up, and that Buccaneers offensive line is really, really, really good. And you're not gonna stop Aaron Donald. You're only gonna slow him down. But this is the offensive line to do it. So I think if they can neutralize the two best players on that Rams defense, that being Jalen Ramsey with all the weapons they have, and the great offensive line versus Aaron Donald, I think that's where they win the matchup, and I think that's where they win the game.
Yeah, I could totally agree with that. So that's it for the picks on us. Solid episode. I think we've pretty much covered everything we wanted. So you can follow Pardue at HC_Pardue. You can follow me at HCJC Sanders, and you can also follow the show at HC_Analysts. We got anything else before we say goodbye?
I think that's all I got, man.
All right, so that's it from us. We hope you have a wonderful football week. Go Cards tomorrow night, and go Ravens on Sunday. From our show out to you guys. We will see you guys next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.